Emily Harris was living a lie, Tyler Grant was drowning in suspicion, and Dr. Nathan Cole was hiding behind a perfect facade. 3 lives tangled in secrecy, obsession, and betrayal. What began as secret relationships spiraled into a deadly triangle, and by the time the truth surfaced, one of them would be buried in the woods, and the others left to face the chilling consequences. Emily Harris had always been the kind of woman people trusted. At 32, she had built a quiet life in the peaceful town of Ridgeview, working long shifts as a nurse at the local hospital. She was the kind of person who remembered her co-workers' birthdays, brought cookies to staff meetings, and always stayed late when someone needed help. Her neighbors described her as warm, polite, and well put together. She lived in a modest but well-kept home on a tree-lined street, where nothing ever seemed to go wrong. But Emily's life was not as perfect as it appeared from the outside. For 5 years, Emily had been in a steady relationship with Tyler Grant, a hard-working mechanic who ran his own garage just a few blocks from her house. Tyler was rough around the edges but deeply loyal. Everyone in town knew about Emily and Tyler. They were often seen grocery shopping together, sitting side by side at local diners, or cheering on the high school football team on Friday nights. They seemed comfortable, settled, and well-matched. People often whispered that a wedding was only a matter of time, but beneath that small-town image was a secret Emily had guarded carefully for years. What no one knew, not even her closest friends, was that Emily was also involved with another man. His name was Dr. Nathan Cole, a prominent emergency physician at Ridgeview General Hospital. Older, married, and respected, Nathan was the kind of man who turned heads when he walked into a room. Their relationship began innocently enough. Late-night shifts led to shared coffee breaks. Coffee breaks turned into lunches, and lunches slowly became weekends spent together at motels out of town or tucked-away rental cabins in nearby counties. Their affair was risky, but the secrecy made it intoxicating. Emily knew it was wrong. She told herself it was temporary, that Nathan would leave his wife eventually. He had promised her as much during one tearful evening in a hotel room after a medical conference. But the months kept passing, and Nathan's promises remained empty. Still, Emily held on. She believed their connection was real, something deeper than convenience or lust. Managing both relationships required extraordinary effort. Emily became a master of deception. She kept 2 phones, maintained separate calendars, and even had excuses prepared in advance for unexpected questions. She learned to lie smoothly, effortlessly, weaving falsehoods into her everyday life without hesitation. On weekends with Tyler, she would smile and nod while secretly thinking about when she could next see Nathan. During hospital rounds with Nathan, she would carefully avoid talking about her life outside of work, steering conversations toward professional matters or hospital gossip. Over time, the double life began to take its toll. Emily started to sleep less. She would stare blankly at her reflection in the mirror, wondering how long she could keep this going. Part of her wanted to be caught, not to be punished, but to be free from the pressure of pretending. The lies felt heavier each day, but she still couldn't bring herself to end either relationship. She feared the consequences of honesty more than the burden of secrecy. The strange part was how easily she had managed to keep the 2 men apart. Tyler and Nathan moved in different circles and had never crossed paths. Tyler had no reason to visit the hospital, and Nathan rarely stepped outside of his tightly controlled routine. Ridgeview may have been a small town, but Emily had found ways to build walls between the 2 halves of her life. But even the most carefully constructed secrets eventually begin to crack. Small mistakes started creeping in. A receipt left in a purse, a misplaced message on her phone, a forgotten explanation that didn't quite match. She brushed them off, told herself she was imagining things. But deep down she knew the clock was ticking. Emily had convinced herself she was in control, that she could handle the risks, that no one would get hurt. But secrets have weight, and over time, that weight can crush even the strongest person. What Emily didn't realize was that the people around her were beginning to notice. And once suspicion enters the picture, it rarely stays quiet. By early May, the first tremors of trouble began to shake the delicate balance Emily had fought to maintain. She had spent the past 2 years carefully keeping her 2 relationships separate, but control was starting to slip from her fingers. The phone she once managed so confidently now felt like a ticking bomb in her pocket. Texts arrived late at night. Unanswered calls piled up. Her mind, once so precise, was clouded with anxiety and sleeplessness. The lies were getting harder to remember. Nathan Cole's home life had become a minefield. His wife, Claire, had always been intuitive. She knew when things didn't add up, when her husband's stories began to shift slightly or his moods became too distracted. At first, she had thought he was just stressed. But then came the long drives, the hushed phone calls, and the sudden overnight trips for conferences. She couldn't verify. She started checking his phone, his credit card bills, even the mileage on his car. Her suspicions hardened into certainty. Desperate for the truth, Claire hired a private investigator. Within days, she had her answer. Grainy photos captured Emily and Nathan together at a secluded cabin rental just outside Lake Tahoma. There was no mistaking their closeness. They weren't simply coworkers. The pictures showed them embracing, sharing a bottle of wine, walking side by side along a dirt path. Confronting Nathan with the evidence didn't lead to honesty or reconciliation. Instead, he shut down, insisting it was over. He told Claire he would fix things, that it had been a mistake, that it wouldn't happen again. But the damage was done. Nathan ended things with Emily shortly after, though he didn't tell her the real reason. He claimed he needed space, time to figure things out, that his feelings had changed. Emily, caught completely off guard, struggled to understand what had gone wrong. She felt discarded, confused, and blindsided. After everything she had risked, after all the promises he had made, he was just walking away. That rejection lit a fuse inside her. She didn't scream or beg, not outwardly. Instead, she began quietly tracking Nathan's movements, checking his social media, reading into every detail. Her heartbreak mutated into obsession. At the same time, Tyler began to notice changes in Emily's behavior. She was distant, distracted, often lost in thought even when they were together. One morning, while she was in the shower, Tyler glanced at her phone buzzing on the nightstand. A message preview caught his eye. A name he didn't recognize followed by a line that made his stomach drop. He waited until she left the house before opening her laptop. There, buried in her messages, was a conversation history with someone labeled only as N. The tone was unmistakably romantic. Phrases like, "Can't wait to hold you again," and "You're the only one who really understands me," screamed betrayal. Tyler felt a wave of nausea. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he copied the number and began his own quiet investigation. He learned about Dr. Nathan Cole, the hospital's star physician, married, 2 kids. Rage simmered in his chest, but he kept it hidden. He needed to know more before he made his move. Now, all 3 of them were circling each other, each armed with pieces of the truth. Emily was unraveling. Nathan was desperate to keep his family intact. Tyler was slowly being consumed by anger. Their lives were no longer running parallel. They were on a collision course. And yet, no one had said anything directly. Everything remained buried beneath the surface, hidden behind strained smiles and silent suspicions. Emily tried to regain control. She sent Nathan a letter she never mailed, wrote long journal entries she locked away. She debated confessing everything to Tyler, coming clean just to stop the madness. But the fear of what would happen, of what either man might do, kept her frozen in place. She was trapped in a maze she had built herself, and every turn led to another dead end. The town of Ridgeview carried on, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath its calm surface. People still waved hello at Emily as she walked her dog, still brought their cars to Tyler's garage, still saw Dr. Cole as the composed professional they trusted with their lives. But behind that peaceful facade, the truth was beginning to boil. And soon someone would snap. On the morning of August 12th, Ridgeview awoke to a sense of stillness. The air was thick with summer heat, the kind that clung to skin and made everything feel heavy. At Ridgeview General Hospital, the morning shift began without Emily Harris. Her name was still on the schedule, and her patients were waiting, but she never walked through the doors. At first, her coworkers assumed she'd overslept or gotten stuck in traffic. Emily was reliable. She wasn't the kind of person to disappear without warning. Calls to her phone went unanswered. Voicemails were left, texts were sent, but there was no response. By mid-afternoon, worry began to spread. A nurse called Tyler, hoping he might have heard from her. Tyler told them she had left the house early that morning, saying she was meeting a friend for breakfast. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. When asked who the friend was, he said he didn't know. It was the first of many things he claimed not to know. Nathan Cole also claimed ignorance. When police contacted him later that evening, he said he hadn't spoken to Emily in over a week. Their relationship had ended, and he hadn't seen or contacted her since. His voice was calm, measured, even helpful. He expressed concern and offered to assist in any way he could. But he also asked not to be mentioned publicly. His family, he explained, had already endured enough. That same evening, a local jogger discovered Emily's car parked awkwardly near the entrance to Ridgeview State Park. The driver's side door was slightly ajar, and her purse was on the passenger seat. The keys were still in the ignition, but there was no sign of Emily. Nothing appeared stolen, and there were no obvious signs of a struggle. Yet something about the scene felt wrong. The position of the car, the open door, the untouched contents, it all suggested someone had left in a hurry or had been taken quickly. Search efforts were launched immediately. Volunteers combed through the wooded trails surrounding the park. Drones were sent overhead. Bloodhounds were brought in, but they lost the scent after just a few hundred yards. The terrain was dense and the summer foliage made visibility difficult. Days passed and still, there was no trace of Emily. Her parents flew in from out of state, pleading with the public for information. News outlets picked up the story. The missing nurse with a hidden past. The two men at the center of the mystery. As police dug deeper, the image of Emily Harris began to shift. Her quiet life was not so simple after all. Investigators uncovered the extent of her secret relationship with Nathan. They found emails, photos, and love letters tucked away in a hidden folder on her laptop. Tyler's discovery of her affair was also confirmed. Phone records showed multiple calls from Tyler to Nathan's office in the days leading up to Emily's disappearance, none of which had been returned. But it was a single photograph that set the internet on fire. Just days before she vanished, Emily had posted a picture on her private account. It showed her sitting on a bench outside the hospital, bathed in sunlight, holding a cup of coffee. At first glance, it seemed like a harmless photo. But when users zoomed in, a figure could be seen in the blurred background. A tall person in a dark hoodie, standing just behind the bushes. The face was turned slightly away, and the quality was too poor to identify them. But the eerie presence sparked countless theories online. Some believed it was Nathan. Others were sure it was Tyler. A few suggested a third person entirely. The mystery deepened. Rumors swirled around Ridgeview. People whispered in grocery store aisles and exchanged theories at gas stations. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had answers. Both Nathan and Tyler denied any involvement. Both had shaky alibis. And with no body, no physical evidence, and no witnesses, police were left chasing shadows. Emily's disappearance consumed the town. Her absence was felt everywhere, in the hospital halls, in the quiet of her empty house, in the unanswered calls still ringing to voicemail. But what no one knew yet was that Emily's story was far from over, and the truth, buried deep in the woods outside Ridgeview, was waiting to be uncovered. 3 weeks after Emily Harris disappeared, a break in the case finally came, not from a tip or a confession, but by chance. A local hiker named Carla Jennings was walking through the western side of Ridgeview State Park, a section less frequented by search teams due to its steep terrain and thick underbrush. As she paused to take a photo near a clearing, her dog began digging furiously at the base of a shallow hill. Carla stepped closer, expecting to find an animal buried beneath the soil. What she found instead sent her running back to her car in shock. The police arrived within an hour. Beneath the disturbed patch of dirt was a shallow grave, hastily covered with rocks and brush. Inside lay the decomposing body of a woman in hospital scrubs. Dental records confirmed the identity the next day. It was Emily. The medical examiner determined she had been killed by blunt force trauma to the head, likely with a heavy object. Defensive wounds on her arms and hands suggested she had fought back. News of the discovery shook Ridgeview. For weeks, people had held on to the hope that Emily was still alive somewhere, maybe hiding or suffering from memory loss. That hope evaporated instantly. What followed was grief, anger, and a renewed urgency to find out who had killed her. Investigators returned to Tyler Grant's home with a warrant. Suspicion had always lingered around him, and now with a body found, they needed answers. In his garage, behind a stack of old toolboxes, they discovered a garbage bag stuffed into a rusted barrel. Inside was a blue cotton jacket, torn at the sleeve, with a faint stain on the cuff. Forensics revealed traces of Emily's blood and a small fragment of the same blue cotton beneath her fingernails. The match was enough for an arrest. Under pressure, Tyler confessed, but the story he told only deepened the tragedy. He said Emily had come home the morning of her disappearance acting strange. She seemed distracted, tense. When he asked what was wrong, she told him everything. The affair with Nathan, the lies, and most painfully, her decision to leave both men behind. She said she needed time to be alone, to clear her head. According to Tyler, something snapped inside him. He offered to drive her to the park for her walk, saying he wanted closure, to talk things through one last time. But when the conversation turned heated, when she told him he had been part of the problem all along, his anger overwhelmed him. He picked up a nearby rock and struck her before he even realized what he was doing. He claimed he panicked afterward. He dragged her body into the woods, dug a shallow grave with his bare hands, and left her there. The jacket torn in the struggle, he tried to hide later. He said he never meant to kill her, that it was a moment of madness. But the calculated way he had lied for weeks afterward told a different story. Tyler was charged with second-degree murder. The trial would come months later, but in Ridgeview, public opinion had already turned against him. People who once brought their cars to his shop now crossed the street to avoid him. His name, once associated with small-town charm and hard work, became synonymous with betrayal and violence. Yet even as Tyler sat in a cell awaiting trial, investigators couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The timeline he gave was full of holes. Cell phone data placed Emily near the park an hour earlier than Tyler claimed to have driven her there. A neighbor's security camera showed her car leaving her driveway alone, not with Tyler behind the wheel. And perhaps most troubling, a burner phone discovered in Emily's home suggested she had received a call the night before her death. A call that lasted only 42 seconds, but came from a number now traced back to an unregistered prepaid phone. Tyler's confession had filled in part of the picture, but it didn't explain everything. Who made that call? Why had Emily gone to the park alone? And what had truly pushed her final steps into that clearing where she met her end? Ridgeview mourned Emily's death, but whispers of a deeper truth still echoed through the town. Tyler might have delivered the final blow, but the chain of events leading to that moment involved more than just him. Somewhere, in the background, another person still held secrets they had yet to reveal. The trial of Tyler Grant began under intense public scrutiny. The courthouse was surrounded by reporters, and the town of Ridgeview was gripped by every new detail that emerged. Tyler sat motionless each day as prosecutors presented the evidence: the jacket with Emily's blood, the phone records, the shallow grave. His own confession was read aloud, the moment of rage, the panic afterward, and the lies he told in the days that followed. The courtroom was packed with townspeople, many of whom had once seen Tyler as a quiet, dependable man. Now, they looked at him with suspicion, disgust, or blank disbelief. But even as the prosecution built their case, questions remained. Emily's final movements didn't align with Tyler's timeline. He claimed to have driven her to the park and argued with her before killing her. But evidence showed Emily had arrived at the park earlier than he claimed. Security footage captured her car leaving her driveway alone. A GPS tracking log on her car's system confirmed she had made the drive by herself. So if Tyler wasn't with her when she arrived, how had the confrontation begun? Why had she gone there alone in the first place? The answer began to take shape when a forensic analyst reviewed Emily's recovered burner phone. It had been overlooked early in the investigation, found at the back of a drawer beneath old paperwork. Though the phone had been reset, a forensic image of its internal storage revealed fragments of deleted data. A single outgoing message caught attention, a partially deleted email draft saved to a linked account Emily used anonymously. In it, she described a threatening phone call she had received a few nights before she disappeared. The caller, whose number had been hidden, had warned her to stay quiet or face the consequences. Emily wrote that she believed Nathan's wife had found out about the affair and was behind the call. Digging deeper, detectives obtained a warrant to search Nathan Cole's home again. In a vent behind his private office, tucked into a bag with old prescription samples and personal documents, they found a small prepaid burner phone. It matched the call records of the phone that contacted Emily that night. When confronted, Nathan insisted he had never used the device. He said it must have been planted or perhaps used by someone else in the household. But no one else in the home, matched the call location at the time it was made. Police couldn't prove that Nathan had placed the call himself, but the implication was enough to raise new suspicions. Was the phone call intended to scare Emily into silence? Had Nathan, or someone close to him, known Tyler might act violently if provoked? While there was no direct evidence tying Nathan to Emily's murder, the timing of the call, just hours before Emily's disappearance, felt too coincidental to ignore. In her final days, Emily had started preparing to come clean. Investigators discovered multiple unsent emails stored on her laptop, addressed to both Nathan and Tyler. In them, she explained her plan to end all contact with both men, to leave Ridgeview, and to start over. She spoke of the guilt she carried, the exhaustion of lying, and her growing fear that someone might hurt her if the truth came out. She had even looked into nursing jobs in another state and sent a rental inquiry about a small apartment in Chicago. The jury deliberated for only 2 days before finding Tyler guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. His lawyer attempted to argue emotional distress and manipulation, but the evidence was too overwhelming. The town finally had its legal conclusion, but the emotional closure remained elusive. Nathan Cole resigned from his position at the hospital shortly after the trial. He sold his house and moved his family out of Ridgeview within months. Though he was never charged with a crime, his career was effectively over. The whispers followed him wherever he went, the respected doctor whose lies may have led to a woman's death. Emily's funeral was quiet, attended by close friends, co-workers, and her grieving family. Her life, once filled with promise and potential, had been consumed by secrets that spiraled out of control. She had tried to fix what she broke, tried to tell the truth before it was too late, but the damage had already been done. To this day, people in Ridgeview still speak her name with sadness. They remember the smiling nurse who loved sunflowers and always stayed late to help a patient. They also remember the hidden pain she carried, the dangerous choices she made, and the final walk into the woods that ended it all. Her story remains a haunting reminder of how quickly secrets can turn deadly, and how sometimes, even the truth can't save you in the end.